Welcome to Athens Happens. I'm Ben Peters, a news editor at The New Political. Athens Happens is a weekly news podcast brought to you by TNP reporters dedicated to explaining the nuances of Athens and state politics. You can find new episodes every Friday at thenewpolitical.com, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, or wherever else podcasts can be downloaded. Today's entire episode will be dedicated to the Democratic presidential debate hosted in Westerville, Ohio, a suburb located just north of Columbus, where 12 Democratic candidates took the stage to discuss their platforms in an attempt to win their party's nomination for the 2020 presidential election. TNP was fortunate enough to send 2 reporters to Westerville to cover the event, so we'll be discussing not only the substance of the debate, but also the experience of covering one of the biggest spectacles in politics, a nationally televised debate. And our opinion columnists, one of whom was present in the audience at Otterbein, will share their thoughts on the candidates' performances. I'm joined by senior writer Nathan Hart and staff writer Nolan Cramer, who were both in Westerville Tuesday to cover the debate. They're now back in Athens to tell us what happened. How are you both?
Doing fine.
I am swell.
Yeah, you guys had a late night last night.
Oh, sure did.
Yeah, operating on about 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a fat nap when I got back to Athens.
Oh my God. So, what happened last night? What happened at this debate in Otterbein, or at Otterbein?
Oh boy, they discussed plenty of topics.
Yeah.
Well, at least I guess starting with the first one they discussed was impeachment.
Yeah.
They pretty much all were like, yeah, impeachment, good. We like impeachment. But you know, some of them had like differing views. Like some of them were like, we can do impeachment. I think it was Buttigieg who said something like that. He was like, we can do impeachment, but we can't like be super partisan about it because it'll make the country more divided.
One thing I found interesting is Steyer didn't get much of an opinion on the impeachment question, but just being a businessman, he came out for impeachment against Trump in October 2017. He's
Right.
kind of been the big advocate among this Democratic field. So I found it kind of interesting that he really didn't get to weigh in too much, but at the same time, he didn't get to weigh in too much in the debate total. He spoke for just over 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So really wasn't too surprising. But if anybody was really against it, he was the one that I thought was going to speak out most for it. And there was also the interesting point kind of brought up that starting out with impeachment, even though it's been the big news, was kind of an interesting choice because by the time we actually get around to November 2020, it's going to be an afterthought in a way because it'll all be over. We'll be electing a new president, and some people thought it was kind of an interesting thing instead of talking about policy right off the bat.
Yeah. So we're in Ohio. The debate was in Ohio. What policies or topics did the candidates discuss that pertain to the state?
Well, they never really like talked specifically about the state. They were never like, I'm going to do this thing, and then this will make Ohio better. They would just like kind of speak generally about how their like big plans would like benefit Ohio. Like they didn't be like, I'm doing this because it'll help Ohio. Like this will help Ohio, but I'm doing it anyways, sort of thing. They talked about their various solutions to the opioid crisis. Kamala Harris, she said she would support jailing farmer executives. Bernie, he didn't say jailing per se, but he basically was like, we got to go after them. They have to like own up for what they've done, and we have to have. He said we have to have a political revolution to show the CEOs that are like harming society that enough is enough. Yeah, they talked about the opioid crisis. Yang proposed decriminalizing opioids so that people can be sent to treatment instead of to jail. And he also, something that no one else said, but he also advocated for opening legal or like safe injection sites or like safe use sites. So, like people can like use opioids at like certain places without worrying about like getting arrested or I'm assuming I'm not too familiar with the concept, but I'm guessing it's like a place where they have like Narcan or something on nearby, or they like control how much you use or something.
And in a lot of questions, they didn't directly bring up like Ohio issues, but they relayed a lot of the questions and topics back to Ohio.
Yeah.
So they briefly talked about like industrial automation and they referred to like the Lordstown
Mhm.
plant that got shut down here in
the
Ohio.
GM
Yes.
plant closure that happened about a little less than a year ago.
Yeah, so it was really just those, with the audience being a pretty large Ohio crowd, they were really appealing to the audience there because these were stories that they have been hearing about for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they really wanted to appeal and show that their stance on that. And quite a few of the candidates actually advocated for making sure those kind of jobs stayed in Ohio.
Yeah. I know Andrew Yang really elaborated on that. Can you guys explain a little bit of what he talked about in terms of manufacturing jobs?
Well, he went at length. Yang's kind of like the tech guy. He went on at length about automation and how that'll affect the world.
Yeah.
He talked about specifically he talked about trucking, about how trucking was like becoming more and more automated and how that'll like it can harm like Ohio's economy and like the economy of the heartland, where that's like a big chunk of people's jobs is driving trucks. And then he also said that like if the trucks become automated, then like what about the diners and like the hotels and the motels like along the way, like what happens to those? So yeah, he was worried about the future of automation.
I was gonna say some of the members of the media kind of took that, they were calling them like robot trucks and taking them kind of as a joke and not that seriously.
At the event?
Yeah, it was just kind of occasionally when you'd hear a candidate speak, you would hear some of the members of the media chuckle or
Yeah.
kind of give a weird look to each other, and that was one of those moments.
Interesting. Were there any standout moments to you guys? Any really big, hard-hitting moments? Maybe something a candidate said, a question that was asked?
One moment that stuck out to me is like when they asked Beto O'Rourke about his mandatory buyback policy for AK-47s and AR-15s, because at like the previous debate he was like, "Hell yeah, we're gonna take your guns," or
Yeah.
And so they went at it and they were like, "Can you explain how this will happen? Like how will mandatory buybacks work?" And he didn't really like give like a specific thing. He didn't say like we're going door to door or anything, which is kind of what they're asking. And then Buttigieg like pressed him on it and was like, "Well, you can't define it, so why are you like bringing it up? Like, how is this going to work? We should focus on something else that seems more reasonable and something that we can easily define, like background checks." And then they just like gotten like a back and forth for like a solid like 5 minutes, I would say. Where at one point, I'm pretty sure Buttigieg said something to Beto. He was like, "I don't need a lesson from you on courage" or something. I think it was because Beto said like Congress doesn't have the courage to act on gun control or something.
Yeah, we should also preface that a lot of this gun control talk last night was asked in the context relating to the shooting that happened in Dayton 2 months ago in the city's Oregon district.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There really wasn't many standout moments, but something that caught a lot of people's attention was the final question that was asked.
Yeah.
Because instead of doing like traditional closing statements, it was this question about what happened last week when Ellen DeGeneres was seen. There was a photo that went around of her with former President George W. Bush at a Dallas Cowboys game where they were sitting together, and Bush being a Republican president and Ellen being an openly lesbian. There was people were kind of criticizing Ellen for being friends with George W. Bush. And so she wanted to say that the two of them were good friends. And so Anderson Cooper, for the last question, said, the question that was asked was, "Tell us about a friendship that you've had that would surprise us and what impact it had on you and your beliefs." And so a lot of people thought it was kind of a strange question to ask because of the pop culture reference to it.
Yeah.
But all the candidates handled it pretty well. But it also kind of followed that traditional closing statement. They just kind of wrapped up their points and plugged their own websites.
Yeah. Did any candidate have a particularly interesting answer to that question?
Who Nolan, you might remember this. Who said that they go to dinner with Ted Cruz? Did Booker say that? Because he said someone said something about going to dinner with Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz is like a big steak guy. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know anything about Ted Cruz's dietary patterns.
Is there anything that happened that you guys were there, you were in the room, not in the debate hall, but you were, with the media. Were there any things that you guys saw that viewers missed at home that you guys found to be particularly newsworthy, interesting?
Not really, because we were just looking at the same thing everyone else was seeing.
Yeah.
Because we weren't in the room, like the actual debate hall. We were in like the media, the spin room next door. So we were just like watching the monitors. I can't really think of anything weird that might have happened.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maggie Prosser, editor-in-chief here at The New Political. Each and every day, I work alongside reporters, editors, producers, and managers who put their heart and soul into the journalism we produce. Here at TNP, we have the honor to tell the stories of the residents of this small town we call home. We're looking for local businesses and other ventures to help us continue funding for our independent journalism, including the podcast you're listening to right now. TNP would love to advertise for you through our website, our biannual magazine, or right here on Athens Happens. If interested, please send an inquiry email to execedit@thenewpolitical.com for more details. We hope working together can support both your initiative and fuel TNP's strong, reliable, and essential journalism here in Athens.
So we're back here. I'm again with Nathan Hart and Nolan Cramer, who are going to discuss the experience of covering a nationally televised political debate as Ohio University students, as student journalists. So how did you both get the opportunity to go to the debate?
The New Political applied for a press credential, and then I was randomly selected by a hat to be the one that went.
And Nolan?
And I had a connection with somebody at the AP.
The Associated Press?
Correct. And so they got me a press credential. But it was a volunteer position, so I got to spend my time helping out with them a little bit and then also writing for you.
Yeah, so what were you doing for the AP?
I was just doing some transcribing, just some general quotes. Whenever they would need to pull a quote from somebody, it was my job to make sure I kind of had that for them.
Were you just working with like a reporter who would say like, hey, grab this quote for me?
It was mainly all digital stuff. Anything that they needed, they would just send off a quick email.
Gotcha.
But in the actual media filing room, Nathan and I got the opportunity to sit next to each other. And
Okay, cool. So what was the experience like? Like, you guys are student journalists going to one of the biggest nights in politics and being there in the scene and hanging out with all the big, both print reporters and media figures, personalities.
It was pretty wild. Like everywhere, we were in a really big room, and like everywhere I turn, I'd be like, oh, that's the ABC News. Oh, there's CNN. Oh, that's New York Times. And like the guys sitting in front of me were Breitbart. So I think it was just like a very like wild experience to be like every like the nation's media is here. Like I could walk over and like just like pick and choose,
Yeah.
And then be like, oh, you're from Fox News, or you're from, MSNBC. Like I could just talk to anyone really.
Did you?
No, I talked to a few folk, but people were kind of in their own world, doing their own things.
Yeah, I get it.
I was going to say, there was also some pretty interesting media outlets. At one point, I ran to MTV News, which didn't even know that they had a news section.
Yeah.
But I believe it was Cory Booker. They got an interview with him, and he mentioned the same thing. He was like, oh, you're with MTV? Didn't know you wrote news.
That's kind of wild. So what was the venue like? This was in a basketball stadium, I believe. The CNN and the New York Times just completely redid the inside.
Yeah, the actual debate was in I actually don't know what the debate hall is. It's a big round building.
Yeah.
But the room we were in was just like a big gym, really, that they had converted. They just like put it was a pretty ginormous gym where they just like hung black curtains like around the whole thing. And they had like lights hanging from the ceiling, and they had like big CNN signs like hanging from the ceiling. And then they just had like rows and rows of tables and chairs with like TVs in front of them, so you could watch the debate. And then on one side that was our side of the room where like everyone would type away, the filing room. And then on the other side of the gym was the spin room, which is where all the candidates came out afterwards to like mill around with the press. That's also where like Chris Cuomo, and I don't know who else was on with him, but Chris Cuomo and like his gang of people that were like commentating for CNN, like that's where they were, just like across the room from us.
I was going to say, everything was very deliberate in how that room was set up. Just really to make it look presentable, because they knew it was going to be on CNN. Anytime you saw that panel of CNN hosts, they were in that room. So it was all very deliberate, making it look presentable to the rest of the nation. Because really, besides for the major like networks, the spin room really wasn't seen by too many people.
Yeah.
What was Westerville like outside of the venue?
It's all right. It's a town.
Were there people everywhere?
Oh yeah, there were people everywhere. Like when I got there, I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Like people walking up and down the street, police riding their bikes everywhere, protesters lining the streets. Where there was an old guy with a gun. One person had a really big balloon that said like, "We got to impeach Trump."
Yeah.
It was a very strange experience.
Yeah. What about you, Nolan?
I spent about my first 2.5 hours there out with the demonstrators taking photos. The thing that was unique is the city of Westerville and Otterbein University set up a free speech zone where they were planning on keeping all these demonstrators. So there was a heavy police presence there. But at some point, they decided that they were going to move down to State Street, which is kind of their main drag through town. There's all the little town kind of things, brick buildings with businesses. So they all decided that they were going to move down that way. So at some point, they all migrated to just the street corners where there was more traffic and more people to see them. And then the police followed. And at some point, there was quite a few people like walking and standing in the road. So then they had mutual aid from Columbus Police and a bunch of officers on bicycles. They came up and started barricading them like on the sidewalk with bicycles and lining them all up. But I spoke with the Westerville Police public information officer before I went down, and she said they were expecting thousands of people just to show up and demonstrate outside and kind of get attention for their causes.
Sure.
And I can tell you there was probably thousands of people there. They were on every street corner, and you saw a wide variety of demonstrators too. You saw supporters of just about every candidate that was there.
Yeah.
And then you also saw Donald Trump supporters. And there were some other littler groups. There was a group that was in support of charter schools that was there demonstrating. And there was a guy dressed as Abraham Lincoln. Quite the experience.
Yeah, this sounds super wild. Like you guys were out there.
Oh yeah, I was out when I got there. I was like it seems like the world's ending. You know, there's cops everywhere. There's all these people dressed strangely, and the cops had like these big trucks with just a weight in the back, where it's just like they put it in the middle of the road so that like you can't ram through it, and they would just like stood in front of it. And I didn't see this, but Nolan, didn't you say that there were like cops on the roofs like with binoculars?
Yeah, there were some sheriff deputies that were like on top of the roof of the Otterbein Student Center with binoculars keeping an eye on all the demonstrators.
Yeah, did you guys get to talk to any students of Otterbein, or like did you just hear rumblings of what maybe they were talking about? Because this was on their campus. Like that'd be like
that'd be wild.
Happened at OU.
Well, I didn't talk to any, but I was walking like next to like an Otterbein student, and he was just like trying to like get to his house, and the cops were like, "You can't go this way, sir." And he was like, "I live down there," and they're like, "Oh, I guess you can go this way." And he was like, "This is crazy," you know. He's like, "I'm just trying to go home."
Yeah. And
there's like people everywhere, and the police are swarming.
Yeah. Wow.
An interesting thing is, and I heard this while I was at the debate, is somebody said that Otterbein was on fall break. So
yeah, there weren't that many. I didn't see many people.
Yeah, so quite a few of their students weren't on the campus.
Okay.
So you really didn't see too many of them walking around. It was mainly other demonstrators.
Did you guys get to meet anybody cool?
Oh, I met Rosario Dawson. She was like walking around the spin room,
which is Cory Booker's girlfriend.
Yes, and esteemed actress.
Yeah.
And she was just like hanging out. Like I thought there'd be like a crowd around her, but there wasn't really. It was just like her and her handler and like 2 or 3 people at a time, and she was just like standing there talking to people. So I talked to her for like a few minutes.
What did you guys talk about?
We talked about Zombieland 2, which is a movie she's gonna be in. We talked about because in the trailer she drives a monster truck. And I asked her if she actually got to drive the monster truck, and she confirmed that she did a little bit.
I didn't meet anybody too interesting, but really in the spin room, I was trying to ask some questions to the candidates.
Yeah. And
so the one that I could get closest to was Steyer, but for some reason he kept ignoring my question every time I asked, like 3 times. I wanted to ask about the role that college students have in his campaign.
Yeah.
And every time I asked it, he said, "I'll get back to you in a minute." So then I just followed him for like 15 minutes and he never answered my question.
How many times did you ask?
Like 3.
Didn't you talk to Tom Perez for a while?
Yeah, he was cool.
Tom Perez, the chairman of the Democratic
Yeah, he
National
was there.
Committee.
Yeah, he had his own. The funny thing about the spin room is there's like these sign bearers they're probably like 5-foot tall signs.
Yeah, they have the candidates' names on them, so you know where to go if you want to like talk to them.
Yeah.
And Tom Perez, he had his own sign, but like he didn't have that big of a crowd because obviously like the thing is like the candidates are here, and like Tom Perez is here also, I guess.
It is important to note that not all the candidates came to the spin room after the debate.
Yeah, there were a few that were missing. Bernie and Joe didn't come out. They sent PR people.
Yeah.
And Tulsi Gabbard didn't come. I don't think Gabbard even sent a PR person.
A handful of them did interviews on CNN following the debate.
I think that's what held Warren up because she came later. Buttigieg didn't come out. But everyone else did.
Did they just kind of like come out and were like, "Hi, everybody," or did they answer questions?
They had like these curtains drawn back, and like there were just like security people and like handlers like milling around where the curtain opened.
Yeah.
And then like they would just like come out and there was like they had like this. It was basically like a red carpet essentially, where like all the journalists were lined up, and they would come out and like all the journalists would yell their questions at them and like snap pictures, and then they would like walk past us all, and then they would just like go out into like the open floor, and then like people that wanted to talk to them would like break off from the red carpet area and just like follow them.
I was gonna say their handlers were pretty strict about which media outlets they talked to at some point. So a lot of the candidates, all the candidates that came out had their campaign staff surrounded around them.
Yeah.
And they all had like this handler. And as soon as they walked out of those curtains, the handler would be like, "We're gonna go talk to these people first." So Booker spent like 45 minutes talking to 3 television stations, it seemed like. He didn't move very far at all. But it was all their moves were kind of planned out.
Yeah, like they would be like, "All right, we're coming up this way," and like we're going this way, and there were like security there. They were like, "We got to keep this area clear so that people can walk through," and it was just like weird. Like I was standing there like along like the red carpet-ish area, and it's just weird being like 2 feet away from like Cory Booker and like all the people you see on TV.
Yeah.
Like I could have just like been feet away from a future president, or maybe. If Booker wins, I got a picture with the first lady. So,
assuming they get married.
Assuming they get married and it doesn't fall through.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that though.
Yeah, you guys mentioned before we started recording that they were very strict about letting Otterbein students ask questions.
Otterbein students had they had preferential treatment. We're in the press in the spin room. They'd be like, Otterbein student gets to ask.
And so these were student reporters, presumably?
Nolan, you were the one that ran into one of them, right?
Yeah, they were from their student publication on campus.
Okay.
The interesting thing was in the media filing room, which is the section of the gym that had all the tables set up, they kind of stuck all the student publications in this one row together because we were in a row, and then there was another person next to us. We don't know what publication he was with, but then right down from that were...
What was it?
We don't know who he was. Like a college-age kid, but we don't know who he worked for.
Okay.
And then right next to him was the
Post.
The Post. George Shilcock of the Post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in front of us was the Columbus Dispatch.
Huh.
And then Breitbart was in front of me. Yeah. And they use Slack.
Yeah, a lot of media organizations use Slack.
Yeah, no, I watched them Slack for a while.
Well, so what was the most memorable moment of the entire experience to you guys?
I feel like just like when I was like standing like in the spin room waiting for everyone to come out, and they would just like come out, and I was like, whoa, that's the guy or the girl. That was pretty memorable.
Yeah.
And also meeting Rosario Dawson obviously is pretty memorable.
Cool.
I think the memorable thing is just at a certain point I realized that I was there.
Yeah.
Like even when you're in the media filing room and you're watching just the CNN stream, at a certain point I realized like they're right next door, and that was kind of a memorable moment for me because it was the kind of moment that like this is real, we're here, we're covering it, and just kind of how substantial it was that we're a fairly small student publication here, but the fact that they let us cover it and be part of the credentialed media.
Yeah.
I also found out that I was in the background of Elizabeth Warren's interview on CNN. Like when she was sitting down with Chris Cuomo, probably at like 12 or 12:30. I was just like in the background because I was just like standing there.
Yeah.
And I was texting my mom. I was like, Mom, I'm gonna try to get in the background so you can see me. and then I was there. And I could just like read their teleprompter and I could tell her what they're gonna say before they said it.
That's amazing.
Another thing was, and we brought this up, also the kind of just characters that were there among the journalists.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple journalists that looked like they were journalists from like the 1930s. They
Really?
had like,
There was one guy with a big trench coat on.
That's awesome.
he was just missing the hat with the little press tag in it.
Yeah.
But everybody was kind of, there was a wide age range of reporters too. There was multiple kid reporters.
Like 10-year-old kids.
Who did they work for?
Scholastic, apparently.
Yeah.
Or they're aspiring Scholastic kids writers. It was very strange because like it's all these like adults and professionals. I'm like, is that a kid? Why does the kid have a press credential?
I was going to say, at one point we made the joke that we should have brought a child with us so we could ask some questions to the candidates.
Yeah.
Because every candidate stopped over
Yeah.
to talk to the kid from Scholastic.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
We said we're a little bit past our prime for interviewing candidates.
There were a lot of like international reporters too. Like there were this German team standing behind me. I'm pretty sure I heard Arabic once.
Hmm.
And then another character, Nolan, that one guy sitting in front of us, that just like, I don't know what he was doing. He just like, he had his laptop closed. He was just watching the debate and like, he would just like laugh and make jokes about like what was going on. Like he wasn't like taking notes or anything. I thought it was it was strange, but it was fun.
I was going to say, about every 5 minutes he would just turn around and make some joke to us about
Yeah.
what was happening in the debate.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this?
Just like a guy sitting in front of us, like an old portly black man that was just like sitting there.
Do you know who you work for?
No.
Hmm.
He was sitting next to Breitbart.
Interesting. Anything else you guys want to add?
The snacks were good.
Oh yeah. The CNN like had like a seemingly endless supply of snacks. They had like goldfish and fruit snacks and kind bars, like quite a variety of snacks. And they had like a fancy like coffee vendor that was there, like giving out coffee for free. And like the coffee never ran out. There was so much coffee.
Was it good coffee?
Oh, it was quality coffee. Some very good coffee.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like run of the mill coffee. It was like some like fancy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I had some Brazilian brew or something that had cranberry and mocha and like other flavors in it, and I was like, this is for real.
That's amazing.
I was going to say, it appeared that CNN and the New York Times really didn't cheap out on the snacks too much.
No, yeah, it was pretty profuse snacks. Like every time a snack would run out, like there's like a worker there that would just like kneel down and pick up more snacks and be like, we got more. And they had like bathroom attendants, not like attendants per se, but like people that would stand outside the bathrooms and they just stood there with like towels in their hands. And then like whenever there was a problem, I guess they would just like go in and clean it. And like it was pretty wild.
Wow. Did they feed you, or was it just the snacks? Like there was no meal?
Nah, just the snacks.
I was going to say, they had food trucks parked outside and you could go purchase meals.
See, I didn't see. I would have done that, but I didn't think you'd be able to like get food through security. But apparently you are. So I just like ate snacks and then I had Steak and Shake at like 2 a.m.
I was going to say, that is kind of an interesting point to bring up about security to get into the media filing room too.
Yeah. What was that like?
There was a bag check, and then all the members of the media also had to go through a metal detector.
Yeah, it was like airport security basically, where you like take your metal stuff off and put them in the little tubs and slide it across.
Yeah.
Except they didn't have like the full body scan or anything. They also had people with like the wands. I didn't see them use it on any of the media, but I guess they were there if they were like, well, your metal's going off and we don't know what it is, you know.
Apparently they weren't that strict. Nathan, you said you went through and
No,
it went off, and he was like, "You're good."
I went through once, and then I forgot to like slide my stuff through. So he was like, "Can you like go back and slide it through?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." So I went back, and then I slid it through, and then I went like through it again, and it went off that time. And he was like, "Well, you went through the first time, it didn't go off, so you're good." And I was like, "Okay."
I was gonna say, security just to get onto Otterbeins campus was pretty strict.
They had a lot of roads closed. Like you had to. I parked like a mile and a half away.
Did you have to pay for parking?
No, luckily not. There was there was a business that they had like these. They were holding these handwritten signs that said like Venmo $20 to park here, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing that, but like I respect the hustle.
You parked in a business, you didn't Venmo them?
No, I parked at like an old folks home that was like down the road that like a bunch of other people were parking.
I was gonna say I was lucky enough to find a spot in their public parking lot.
Really? What time did you guys get there at?
I got there at probably like right around 5, a little bit before then, and then I just like wandered around trying to like figure out where I needed to go.
Yeah.
I got there just before 5:30,
Yeah.
and I would say it wasn't clearly marked where you were supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got there and I was wandering around, and a couple people told me to go to the wrong place.
There'd be a few times where I'd be like, oh, I'll go this way. I'll like go through here to get to where I need to go. But there'd always be like a person standing there that's like, you can't come through here. And I was like, oh, okay.
I was gonna say the interesting thing was Arbine's campus. They had like metal barricades or was like roped off around the whole thing, and there were signs that said like secured area. Where
Yeah, you couldn't like stand on the lawns of like any of the houses. They were like lining the street, which I thought was weird. I guess they're just trying to
like residential houses.
Yeah, or like historical houses like we have uptown.
Yeah.
They just like had them roped off and they're like you can't go through there unless you're like CNN staff or police.
Yeah.
So they just had like one entrance for both the media to go through and anybody that was actually attending the debate in the audience. And that's where I got confused because they had volunteers set up around campus, probably about every 1,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
They just volunteered. They were Westerville residents, and they all had like these blue Westerville shirts on.
Mm-hmm.
And you would ask them where to go, and they'd point you in the right direction. And I got to the entrance, and they were like, "Have your ID," and we all had like a barcoded ticket.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Have your ID and your QR code ticket out." And I got there, and they were like, "Are you attending the debate?" And I was like, "As credentialed media." And the officer that was there was like, "As what?" And I was like, "Credentialed media." And then the one person was like, "They're supposed to go that way too." And there was just a lot of general confusion over where we were supposed to go.
See, I figured it out. There was like a really big line, like a mile, like a line that went on like 100, 200 yards, like to get into the debate.
Yeah, like
and
for attendees. Of the
yeah,
debate.
yeah. And I was like, I hope this is not the media line. But then I just like strolled right up and walked right in, and there was no line to get into the media place.
Huh.
I was so pleased.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there was a lot of people lined up to get into the debate hall.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what their security screening was like to get into the hall, but starting right when I got there at 5:30, they were lined up outside because it appears that seating was just first come, first served instead of having assigned seating in the debate hall. So that's why there was such a large line. But even up until like 7:30, there was still a line outside for people waiting to get into the debate hall.
Yeah. Before we recorded this, Maddie Kramer, who will be on the opinions segment, which is next, was telling us about how when she was in the audience, they had 3 breaks for the commercial breaks, and you were able during those breaks to get up and leave and like go to the bathroom and whatnot. But they had like a countdown, and if you weren't back in your seat by the time the debate restarted, they would have somebody go and sit in your seat. Like they had volunteers there to fill up all of the seats in the auditorium, which I thought was insane.
That's pretty insane. I guess they do that at award shows too.
Okay.
Like just makes it look like look at all the people. They're here.
Yeah, she was like, yeah, I got up to go to the bathroom, and I heard like on an intercom like 90 seconds, and she was like just ran back into the debate room. So yeah, man, you guys sound like you had a great time.
Oh yeah, it was very fun.
Definitely.
Anything else?
Oh no, I think that's about it.
I think that's it.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey all, Sarah Horn here. I'm the digital manager at the New Political. And if I had to pick the best decision I made as a college freshman, joining this outstanding publication would be it. At TNP, I've had the experience of creating both compelling written and digital content. My understanding of local politics has also immensely improved. TNP makes integration between written and digital work for staffers a priority and offers the unique opportunity to have a wide portfolio of clips. Not only that, but working for this publication helped me land an internship in Washington, D.C. as a digital productions intern for The Hill. Our publication is award-winning, independent, nonpartisan, and run by a dedicated team of student journalists. Apart from its content, the New Political has brought me some of my closest friends. The people who I work with make my job fun and fulfilling, and they never cease to amaze me with their kindness, collaborative spirits, and humor. If you too want to join the New Political, come to our all-staff meetings, Sunday evening at 7 p.m. in Scripps Hall 210, or reach out to me at shorne, SHORNE, at thenewpolitical.com.
Please note that the views and opinions expressed by the columnists don't reflect the views of the New Political. Up next, opinion editor Charlotte Caldwell and opinion writer and member of the OU College Democrats, Maddie Kramer, are both here to discuss their views on the debate. How are you both?
Good, thanks.
Good. Glad to be here.
Yeah? So, Maddie, you were at the debate last night. How did you get to go?
Yeah, so I am the vice president of OU College Democrats, and Eva Holtkamp, who is the president of Ohio College Democrats, in charge of all of the chapters in the state, was able to receive more tickets from the Ohio Democratic Party itself. So she was able to redistribute that among the chapters, and we had quite a large representation. There were 7 of us there from Ohio University, which was very cool, as well as people from Denison, Miami, and a few other. Wittenberg as well was there. So it was very cool to be there with other college Dems.
Cool. So what was it like being in the room?
It was
The
really
auditorium.
surreal. I've never been to Otterbein, so when I walked in, it definitely did not look like a basketball stadium. They had it done up very nice, which was good. Definitely looked really professional. People everywhere. We only waited in line for like an hour and a half, which was pretty nice. And there was like food trucks and things around, so they did a really nice job. I was a little apprehensive about it being on a college campus, but yes, it was a very interesting experience. While we were waiting for the debate to start, I got to meet Chris Cuomo from CNN, and Joyce Beatty, who is a congresswoman from Franklin County. She was walking around saying hi to everybody, so it was a very surreal experience for sure.
Yeah. And so, Charlotte, you were here in the TNP newsroom here in Athens, Ohio, and you were live blogging the debate on our website. How was that?
It was really fun, actually. I like to get to do that in real time, and because usually it would just be like me and my mom. That's usually the dynamic, like going back and forth on opinions, but getting to do it with the people in the newsroom was a really fun experience.
Awesome. So let's get into the actual substance of what happened at this debate. First, I know the very first thing right off the bat, they asked questions about impeachment, about Nancy Pelosi's decision to move toward opening a formal impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump because of his call and a handful of other things, his call with the Ukrainian president. So we'll start with you, Maddie. What is your take on how the candidates discussed the topic of impeachment?
It was really interesting that they opened with this because it started kind of, they all unanimously said they support impeachment. And Tom Steyer, who made the stage for the first time last night, was able to kind of stand on his soapbox and talk about his need to impeach movement that he started in late 2017. So I thought that was kind of interesting for him to kind of be like, I've been working on this for longer, and the people were saying on stage that they were pushing for this to happen, but now they're all unanimously supporting the impeachment inquiry, which was to be expected.
Yeah, I think Tom Steyer was one of the first of the candidates years ago, before he was even a candidate.
Yeah. So before he even announced he would be leading this movement, and then resigned as the head of Need to Impeach when he announced his candidacy.
What about you, Charlotte?
Yeah, so like Maddie said, they're all on board pretty much with the impeachment, so it was kind of like the topic didn't really go anywhere. I kind of thought that the moderator spent too much time on the topic because they all basically said the same thing. But I think the most interesting part was when Bernie Sanders said that Trump is the most corrupt president in the history of this country. I don't really know if that's the most factual statement, but a lot of people got on board with that. Like then afterwards, Biden said the same thing, just in a different way. So it showed that the candidates are really willing to do or say anything to get Trump out of office.
So another tentpole discussion of this entire saga of the Democratic primaries and these debates has been healthcare, and how the Democratic Party is a lot of infighting over where they stand on healthcare, whether they do want to go for a Medicare for all or a public option or a reform Obamacare. There's all kinds of different opinions. What did you guys think of the candidates' stances that they expressed during this debate on healthcare?
So the healthcare argument is a big part of the Democratic Party for sure. with Obamacare and all those other things, Medicare for All plan, Medicare with private option. It's definitely a big thing going on, and that's on the candidate's mind, which Warren was getting attacked for her Medicare for All plan. Pete made himself known and very outspoken last night about the Medicare for All with a private option, and he attacked Warren for that. And she kind of stumbled when she was talking about not wanting to admit to taxing the middle class. Bernie admitted to this, and she was trying to say that she would only tax the very wealthy, in her words. And Bernie was saying it's probably not how it's going to happen, but it's obvious that she does not want to say that she's going to tax the middle class, because then that'll be used against her pretty frequently. So
What about you, Charlotte? What do you think about the healthcare discussion?
I think more candidates are really getting on board with the Medicare for All who want it instead of just Medicare for All in general.
Which is essentially a public option.
Yeah. So Elizabeth Warren seems to think that Medicare for All is achievable, but she never stated, like Maddie said, who was going to actually foot the bill. I think it was good on Bernie Sanders that he was being truthful with that, because I think the American public need to know that. But through most of the night, Elizabeth Warren's phrase is, I have a plan and I know how to make it work, but she never really stated how she was going to make it work. But I think other than Sanders and Warren, most of them are on board with Medicare for All who want it, so the public option. Yeah.
Which candidates do you think align most with where you want to see healthcare go in this country, Maddie?
I am definitely a Warren girl, but this is a thing, especially with last night, hearing Pete talking about the, when they throw out numbers about all the Americans who would like to stay with their private insurance. It definitely seems a way to get closer to Medicare for All. Going from what we have now to Medicare for All would be very difficult and would probably not work as immediately as some people might think it would. So I think the Medicare for All who want it, Medicare for also with a private option would help those and be a stepping stone to Medicare for All. And if that ends up working and people are doing much better with this Medicare for All who want it plan, then I'm all for it. I really do think it is more responsible than jumping into something that we might not be ready for.
Charlotte?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think Klobuchar was pretty much, at least in this debate, the voice of reason for Medicare for All. She said something that was the difference between a plan and a pipe dream is something that you can actually get done. So I think that Warren and Sanders' views are kind of too skewed to the left for a lot of Americans. And I also think Buttigieg was good when he said Medicare for All who want it. He always presses that point. So I think that's a little bit more moderate option that would incorporate bipartisanship.
Okay. So another big topic was tax policy. What do you think of the candidates' discussion of this particular issue, Maddie?
Yeah, this is definitely Bernie's hill to die on. His thing from 2016 with the millionaires and the billionaires. So you could see him kind of come alive on the stage when they were like, okay, Bernie, here's your time. So, of course, he's talking about the wealth tax, taxing the top 1%, and the fact that they have more wealth than half of the nation. But what I thought was very interesting was to talk about universal childcare and universal pre-K, which I had never really heard before other than Castro.
I believe this is all an Elizabeth Warren policy. Both of those were originally hers.
Yeah. So I know that universal pre-K was also a very interesting thing for some smaller, more local, statewide elections in 2018. So I thought this concept was very interesting that they touched on. And Bernie said that, keeps talking about, the rich getting richer while there's wealth inequality. But something that I thought that was a really good soundbite for him was that it's a moral and economic outrage. And Tom Steyer and a few others, held on to that. We're like, yeah, you're right. So the first time I had heard this wealth tax really discussed for a long period of time, besides at the certain candidates' rallies, was very interesting.
What about you, Charlotte?
Yeah, I don't know if I actually really knew the whole ins and outs of the wealth tax, so I thought it was interesting that they brought it up at this debate. But I think that Warren's ideas that like the wealth tax would pay for everything from like free like pre-K schooling or like tuition-free public college, like all that together just sounds like a really like expensive task. And I don't know if the wealth tax would necessarily cover all that, but like she said, she has a plan, but she never really explains that plan. So then the way Buttigieg, I always bring up Buttigieg because he's one of my favorites, but the way he put it was like, let me tell you, the way that it looks from the industrial Midwest is that the Washington politicians, congressmen, senators, they're all saying the right things, but nothing changes. Like they're all just saying it just to say it. So I think that that's kind of what Warren was doing on the stage, which is something that I didn't really see from her the last couple times, because she usually makes really good points, and it's something that people think, oh wow, this might actually get done, but then today or last night she was just not on her game, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that. She definitely stumbled on quite a few questions in the beginning, and I think that translated throughout the debate. Plus, the way that people are attacking her as the new front runner, I think she may have not expected him to come at her so hard. From Tulsi Gabbard to Kamala Harris, to people directly addressing her. To that point, the moderators had to actually cut to commercial because Tulsi was trying to take the questions into her own hands. I thought that was very interesting, and it's definitely going to be telling because they were more focused on her than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And Cory Booker even stood up for Joe Biden, saying that the pointed question about him and his son's involvement in Ukraine was not okay. And I thought that was very interesting. They went from, yelling at Biden about his former voting record and Kamala telling him that she was that little girl to, it's okay, we have to lay off. So I thought that was very interesting as well.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that both the Washington Post and the New York Times front page was essentially saying that Warren is essentially the new front runner, and that is evident because all these candidates are attacking her instead of Biden. So were there any big moments last night that really stuck out to both of you in any of these candidates' performances, or anything somebody said, maybe a particular question that was asked?
Yeah, the questions last night were all over the place. The other students from Ohio University I was sitting with, I really kept looking to them with our mouths were open at some of these questions. The Hunter Biden one, right off the bat, was definitely not expected, and I don't think he had to expect to vouch for himself and his son at the Democratic debate. Yeah. As well as the question about Bernie's age and his fitness. But he was ready to answer that. And he was talking about he was ready to go. He's got a big rally this weekend with a little teaser.
And Bernie, it's worth noting, had a heart attack
a
week and a half ago. So he was off the campaign trail. He just came back and did this debate.
Yeah. So they talked to him about that. And he was expecting it, and this morning it comes out that AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is expected to be at his rally on Saturday and expected to endorse him.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting for him. Gave him a good plug to talk about a rally with a surprise. And but Biden also handled that question pretty well, talking about he doesn't need any on-the-job training, which I thought was interesting. But vice president and president are definitely much different, especially in this climate. Being a Democrat is going to be much different than serving with Obama than being the president yourself. And then the last question, instead of closing statements, which I thought they would do, was about a surprising relationship. Yeah. Which most talked about relationships with Republicans, but then Tom Steyer talked about a fellow environmental activist, but she was a woman and of a different race, and that's how they were different. But other people talked about Rand Paul and John McCain and pretty prominent Republicans, so I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. Any big moments for you, Charlotte?
Yeah, so I also had when the last question, I thought it was a little bit of a softball question. Like, instead of just closing remarks, they're like, oh, let's just give this question to tie it all together and we're all one big happy family. That's what it seemed like. So I think the idea that they usually discuss their opposition to Republican leadership, but then they were asked to discuss how they're going to be bipartisan with the Republicans. I just think that was a little bit counterintuitive. But then another thing I thought was interesting about the debate is when O'Rourke was talking about his gun buyback plan, and then he was getting a lot of hate from Pete Buttigieg, who was coming after him for his statement, like, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15 or in your AK-47. He just didn't seem like that was, like, Buttigieg was thinking that wasn't very reasonable, and it's not something that's going to happen very easily, and I agree with him on that. I don't think that taking away somebody's constitutional right is going to be very easy. I think that there's going to be a lot of pushback with that, and I think they need to go about it a little bit less than he's doing it. Like, it needs to not be as forceful as he's taking it.
Yeah, Castro's point to that as well, saying going in some neighborhoods and threatening to take things from people is not going to go over well, which I thought was a really intuitive statement that hadn't been made before. And I think that was pretty important for Beto, because I think he usually just sneaks in there with a one-liner about it. But they pressed him on that, Castro and Buttigieg, which I thought was important.
So who do you both thought won last night?
So Pete came off the strongest he ever has. We were talking about he probably had some advice from staffers that he needed to be a little more aggressive, and he definitely turned it up quite a few notches. It was not the Pete we are used to seeing, which was okay, but also I think turned off a few people in talking with people around campus today, and definitely on social media, people were like, what happened to Pete? You know, we're used to him being calm and, you know, kind of just saying his piece, but he was coming after quite a few people, which is very interesting, challenging Beto, as you said, and Warren. Kamala did well. She stayed on the sidelines, but definitely brought up the conversation about reproductive rights, which was important in the beginning, backed up by Cory Booker, who also stayed on the sidelines. And Bernie did much better than I thought, considering what had happened, you know, that he's still recovering from quite a major surgery.
Yeah.
And then after the debate, started hearing rumors about AOC's involvement and her endorsement pending this Saturday. So I definitely think they all ended up being considered winners. Warren did not definitely do as strong as she has in the other ones, which was kind of unfortunate. She definitely did not seem like she had all the plans like she usually does. But you know, she still had the most talking time. It was her and then Biden. So that's also something to note.
Yeah, I agree. I think Elizabeth Warren didn't come off as very like well-spoken, because she's usually more well-spoken and passionate. Like, her well-rehearsed responses usually come off good with the crowd. But this time I just think she wasn't ready for the questions that they asked her, just because they were so different than the norm. So I think she probably would have been one of the losers. But I think one of the winners would have been Amy Klobuchar. She actually came off to me as like a more put together candidate than she usually does. She usually doesn't like spike my attention very much, but some of the stuff she was saying to the other candidates and the banter was really good. She seemed to be more moderate. I didn't really think of her that way before this debate. But she wasn't really like playing nice with the other candidates, as you would say, or she was like asking the tough questions like the way that a debate should be, instead of just being friends, all being friends.
Yeah. Is there anything else you both would like to add?
Yeah, I definitely think the more moderates showed themselves last night. Pete and Klobuchar especially. Tulsi Gabbard got a few quips in, but nothing remarkable. Kamala and Booker stayed on the sidelines for the most part, but definitely I think Pete and Klobuchar kind of made themselves a little more known. Castro and Yang had a few little bits in there, but definitely was not their night either. So definitely the 3-4 runners, and then Pete and Klobuchar for sure.
Yep, I agree with that.
All right, well, thank you both so much. We really appreciate it. And that wraps it up here on Athens Happens. Make sure to tune in every Friday for new episodes that shed light on the politics that impact all of our lives. Remember, you can find the show on the New Political's website, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and on YouTube in a video podcast format. Also, be sure to check out our website at thenewpolitical.com, where we regularly report stories on what really happens here in Athens, and follow @thenewpolitical on social media. Thank you all so much. Have a great week.